Good morning. On behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. Today's webinar is a conversation with an industry leader discussing the topic of work sabbaticals. This is a pre-recorded session and is being broadcast today, July 13th, 2023. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2023 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, supporting, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. Our theme this year is Together Towards Tomorrow. Please be sure to head to the Alliance website for all upcoming events. We will be hosting webinars, collaboration sessions, and in-person events throughout the year. Be sure to check back on the website for all registration details. And if you cannot make one of our virtual or in-person events, don't worry. All events are recorded and will be on demand for our followers. Our book club is in full swing. Quarter 3 kicks off this month with Braving the Wilderness, The Quest for True Belonging, and the Courage to Stand Alone by Brene Brown, and Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead by Sheryl Sandberg. Head to our website to join the discussion. The Alliance grew so much in 2022 as we launched several new chapters. Please be sure to connect with your local ambassador for all upcoming events to kick off your time with the Alliance. If you would like more details on the ambassador program, please check out a replay of our January panel where we provided details about the program and how to get involved. Change is preceded by trust. It is through acceptance and inclusion that trust will be formed and positive impact will occur. The Alliance is committed to creating a safe space in the workers' compensation industry for women of diverse backgrounds and experiences through a shared culture that integrates various perspectives. This is who we are and who we will be. The time to do better and be better is now. The Alliance understands that diversity is a journey that will take time to make meaningful changes for our organization, its followers, and its supporters. We will be intentional in making progress along our key pillars of change. Turning to today's webinar, have you ever considered changing everything about your current course of work, switching to an entirely new industry, or maybe even taking a sabbatical from work in general? How do you decide if that can work for you and your family, and what does that conversation look like? How do you know when it's right to re-enter the workforce, and then how do you navigate the change that occurred while you were away? Today's conversation focuses on a sabbatical from work and the lessons and advice that can apply to any big change that alters your course for a period of time, and will also help you understand how to maneuver through the decision-making process, both to change your course and to move back when the time is right for you. Alliance board member Julie Layton leads today's discussion with Bonnie Barham. Bonnie is a senior vice president and branch manager for Chubb Global Casualty. She is responsible for managing all aspects of the Southwest region, including underwriting, new business development, and client relations. She joined ACE Risk Management in 2006 as an underwriting assistant. Bonnie has over 24 years of primary casualty underwriting and consulting experience and began her career as an underwriting trainee, has held various underwriting positions, and was a risk management analytics consultant. She also had the honor and privilege of taking an 8-year sabbatical between her time at Marsh and her time at Chubb to stay home with her 2 beautiful girls before they started school. Although this is a pre-recorded session, please utilize the chat feature throughout the session with your thoughts and to engage with your fellow members about this topic. This is a very pertinent topic for many of us, and we love to hear your thoughts with each other. Thank you so much for the time you're spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Layton, and today I'm representing the Alliance of the Women of Work Comp. For those of you who aren't familiar with the organization, we are an association of over 7,000 members, and we're working on kind of sharing and supporting women in our industry, as well as advancing innovation and new ideas for workers' compensation. So today I'm pleased to share with you a guest that I have with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about her career journey, Bonnie Barham. Bonnie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bonnie Barham. I'm currently a Senior Vice President Branch Manager for Chubb Global Casualty. I'm based in Dallas. My primary responsibilities include overseeing the underwriting operations for workers' compensation, general liability, and auto liability for national corporations, large companies. I also am responsible for the new business development as well as all the client relationships.
Great, thank you. Well, we certainly appreciate the chance to sit down and talk to you and have you share your story. Maybe it's always interesting to find out how people got started in our industry. So, would you mind sharing how you got into insurance to begin with?
Sure, it was definitely an accident because I did not. When you think of insurance, you always think of kind of the personal lines, the homeowners, the car insurance. But I was interviewing in college. I graduated with a finance degree and happened to interview with Cigna and was successful, joined their special risk facilities at the time training program based in Houston. So I went through a 2-year rotation where I basically rotated through all the various insurance related operations, from processing to risk control through claims and underwriting, and then eventually ended up as a construction underwriter in Dallas.
Great. Yeah, it seems like, I always see those memes of people like falling down a driveway and then, landing on their feet or something. And it's always like how I got into the industry. So we all have great stories of how we got in. And certainly many of us had the opportunity to join companies where there was really some robust training. So it sounds like you had a great start in your career.
I did. I feel very blessed.
Yeah. I think for all of us, there's been times when we've been pulled between work and home, though, especially for women. Can you describe maybe a little bit about how you were pulled and what that meant for you in terms of your career?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was going to say, how far was I into my career at the time? It was probably 5 or 6 years. And I was working for a large broker. I was an analytics consultant at that point. I'd recently been married, had gotten married, and we decided to start a family. So I had every intention. I had a little girl, had every intention of going on maternity leave and then returning to work. But soon realized that becoming a mom was going to be very challenging. And being a mom was very challenging in those early years when she was an infant. My husband worked full time, had a very demanding career as well. And we were very torn with how are we going to balance this, because we had no family near us to help. I mean, it was me and my husband, and we had to figure it out. So I came back to work for about 6 months before we decided that probably the best thing for our family was that one of us needed to take a break probably and stay home while our daughter was a baby. So we made the decision jointly that I would step back and switch gears and leave my career and become a stay-at-home mom. So yeah, it was a tough decision. It was one that we debated probably for 6 months, because I didn't stop until she was 9 months old. So
it's really interesting because actually in my career we went through the same thing when we had children.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that my husband was the one who decided to stay home. At that time we were a little bit silly saying, well, what changes in accounting? You can stay home for a little bit and I'll keep working. And so it's interesting the dynamics that goes through. But for being the person that was kind of chosen then to give up, your career, what kind of emotions did you go through, and how did you prepare for those conversations that you'd have to have back in
Oh,
the workplace?
it was definitely an emotional roller coaster. In the sense that when I was at work, I wanted to be at home. When I was at home, I kind of wanted to be at work. Um, it was definitely a struggle. I think one of the biggest fears I had was if I leave, will I ever have an opportunity to come back? Would I ever be able to re-enter the workforce when I felt like it was time? I went to college. I was very ambitious in those early days and, never thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So it was tough, but I think once we came to the decision, I almost felt relieved, I think, maybe a little bit like, okay, I've made this decision and we're just going to do it. And we weighed the financial aspects of it too. And it just made the most sense at the time because my husband was further ahead in his career for me to actually take a step back.
Mm-hmm. So when you prepared to kind of talk to your boss or your employer at the time,
Mm-hmm.
was it, uh, there's a lot of reasons why people kind of decide in their lives maybe to step away from a little bit, but was there any kind of like scenario or strategy that you had to that, or were you simply really just going to give it all up? Or, and how did you have that conversation with your boss? And I'm curious kind of what the reaction was too.
Yeah. I think because of the time they weren't surprised because I think there were women that were doing it probably more frequently then than they are today. Um, so I mean they were gracious about it. I gave notice. I tried to make it as easy as possible for the company. But they were very accepting, understood why I was making that decision. Um, so I think they were supportive of it. There really weren't opportunities to downshift further or do something different. So, I
You
they were
just went
great.
cold turkey and just did
I
it.
just went cold turkey. Yeah. I mean, they were great. It was scary though,
Yeah.
because we were giving up an income. So, really had to fine tune that budget.
Mhm. Yeah. And so talk about now you're at home
Yes.
and raising your children, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And not everyone has like a wonderful reason why they take some of these breaks, but just kind of talking about, you know, you knew probably you weren't done in your career, or tell me what you were thinking or when you realized like, okay, I'm gonna be off for this amount of time. Did you stay true to that, or how did you decide like, okay, I'm gonna do something different and go back?
Yeah. When I left and made the decision to leave, I really didn't know. I was like, it could be forever. It could be for a year. It could be for 2 years. I didn't know if I would, ever be able to come back. Um, so I, had my daughter. 2 years later, I had another daughter. So I think once I had two, my feeling was if I ever go back to work, it probably wouldn't be until they started school. Um, but I did everything I could while I was a stay-at-home mom to, just try and keep my technology skills up to date. When I left the industry, email was fairly new still. The internet wasn't really being utilized. So I was using Lotus and not Excel. And so I just really worked to try and keep up my skills from a technological standpoint. I stayed in touch with people that I worked with. I made sure that I didn't lose those connections. Um, and then I was really fortunate that I had a mentor early on, underwriting mentor who later became a manager, started reaching out to me when I guess my youngest daughter was 4. So it was probably 2 years before I came back officially. And every quarter he'd reach out and say, "Hey, you getting sick of staying home? Are you ready to come back?" And it really got me thinking, wow, I really will have an opportunity to possibly go back. And he did. He called me every quarter for 2 years. And he called me 2 months before my youngest was going to start kindergarten and said, "Hey, we've hired, such and such to come back to work. She's going to manage the underwriting assistants." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And he says, meet with her. And I said, "Okay, you know what? I'll meet with her." So I went into the office. I met with her. I met the underwriting manager at the time. And I started to get excited. I was, oh my gosh, I really might be able to come back to work. And, really thought about it because he was pushing me to come back in an underwriting role. And I was like, "I'm not ready for that. I don't think the demands of being client facing again and the pressures of underwriting and the deadlines and balancing family, that scared me." My girls were still young. They were becoming more independent, but they were still young. So I said, "You know what? I'll come back as an underwriting assistant." And he was like, "I can't believe you're going to do that," because it was a step backwards for me from where I was when I left my career. But I felt like it was going to give me the chance to reenter and set the pace for reestablishing my career while still being there for my family. So I really felt like it was going to be a balance. My husband was scared to death. He was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I think he was more scared about what it was going to do to his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what an incredible leader that person was to continue to stay in touch with you.
Yep.
I often think about that, what you were saying, and just, as a leader myself, and certainly the war on talent right now, how many people, maybe are in that situation that would love to come back into the workplace that, whether if they haven't kept in touch or they haven't, reached out and communicated to their prior bosses or what have you, because they feel almost maybe even a little insecure. I'm curious, like, if you didn't have that manager calling you saying, come back, the farther, the more time that you're away, the harder it is to kind of, catapult yourself forward. So having somebody pulling you is a fortunate thing, I think, that happened to you.
Well, you are afraid because 8 years had gone by since I came back to work. I was gone out of the industry. I wasn't keeping up with the industry and the changes in the industry while I was gone. So I was a little nervous, a little scared. I was like, what if I don't remember how to do something? Or what if things have changed so much that I'm not going to know what to do anymore? And, and I vocalized those concerns when I talked to, kind of went through the interview process again. And they were all, "It's insurance. It doesn't change."
Trying to drive new innovation, but
a
lot of the components don't change. But
I
am curious, you said you stayed up with, some of the technology and trying to make sure that you stayed, up to speed, your skills or whatever. How did you find yourself, the first month or two? Did you feel like, a brand new, or was it like riding a bicycle and you kind of just stepped right into it? It sounds like a lot of self-doubt leading into it, but I'm just wondering,
the first
what did
few
you
months,
realize when you got back?
When I came back to work, how was it? I was actually very elated. I was so excited to be back to work. I was actually excited to get up in the morning. I remember because I think my first day of work was pretty much my daughter's first day of kindergarten, so I remember getting dressed up for work, taking her to school, walking her to her class, getting in my car and driving to work. And I mean, it was fun. I felt excited. I was ready to dive into challenges and take on responsibilities. So I ran off adrenaline. I was doing everything. I was super mom. I was super person at work. We hadn't found our new rhythm yet, but I'd say after a few weeks and a month, I started going, okay, wow, I'm busy. And, thank goodness my husband was great. He started taking on more responsibilities with the girls, and with, running the household. We were lucky he was working from home at the time, which was nice because he was always kind of close by, if the girls needed him for something. So that really helped. But I mean, it was definitely a transition to come back.
Yeah. And I think too, kind of, I'm curious, you started when you came back in a role that you were really overqualified for, but you really wanted to ensure the ability to either ease into building
Right.
your career back or making sure that you were still kind of respecting and wanting that time for yourself at home. I'm curious though, how quickly did your, you know, internal like drive, kick in and you began kind of saying, okay, I know I took a step back here, but now I want to take a step forward. How quick was that for you and what did that look like?
It happened probably within 6 months. Yeah, so I transitioned out of the underwriting assistant role into an underwriter role. Um, Definitely within that first year, I was promoted out of it, and it was pretty funny because the underwriting manager, she was like, "It made no sense. You're an underwriting assistant, but you were taking work off my desk and doing it." And she's like, "It just, yeah." You were doing the job of an underwriter, you weren't doing the job of a UA. So very quickly I moved on, and transitioned back into the underwriting role. But I will say, because I had such phenomenal managers, I mean, our communication was so good. I would tell them, I've got to step back. I can't take on that project or that client because I don't want to do the travel. I'll do anything else, but I don't. And they respected that. So I was always able to manage the work I was doing and set my priorities and balance my work with my family. And they were respectful of that. And because they were willing to give me that accommodation, I mean, I gave them everything. When I was working, I mean, they had 100% of me. And I probably put in more effort and worked harder because I was just so thankful and grateful to have had that environment and that opportunity. And I just think that's so important. Managers need to be communicating with their employees. Employees need to communicate with their managers. You're really a team, and you're not going to accomplish your goals and be successful if you're not communicating and aligned. So I really attribute a lot of my success to that.
I think it's wonderful that, what you said about, I just said no, or I asked,
Yeah.
I'll do anything, but I really, are drawing a line here. I don't want to be away from my family on the road. And so many women, I think, have a hard time of saying no because they do feel that it will hold them back. It will, prevent them from reaching the levels that they want to, especially as compared to maybe their counterparts.
Right.
So great job for you kind of setting that discipline and then having the confidence or the will to really make sure you kind of live by that.
Um, yeah, I definitely feel very thankful and blessed to have come back into the environment that I did. Um, I came back, I've been with Chubb now, it's almost 17 years. And when I returned to work, it was with Chubb, who was ace at the time. Not sure I'm supposed to say that, but they were ace at the time. Um, and have been able to grow my career with the same company. To have gone from coming back as an underwriting assistant to now being a senior vice president. And I do attribute that to the leaders that I've had and mentors and managers in my life. That is so critical. The people that you work with and build your relationships with are just, I think, critical. And it's an investment that I think every person needs to make. It's probably the most important investment in your career is the people, in terms of are your relationships and the
Your
people that you're working
relationships.
with.
Is there anything unique that you do or advice that you could give about, how do you build relationships? I think especially it's difficult building those relationships above yourself, above your role.
Mhm.
So we do a really good job of the teams that we work with, our peers. What are some of the things that you did proactively, especially even early on in your career? And then now as a senior leader, still your relationships with your C-suite leaders, like
Mhm.
what are some things that you do that you think are kind of maintain that open dialogue or create those opportunities for mentorship or sponsorship?
Yeah, I'm not sure why my managers and mentors and leaders, were, what they saw in me, that they invested so much in me. I just know I've always tried to be positive. Um, if I'm not happy with something, I always try to be constructive in my um, communication. If I see a problem or if I don't like something, I always try to come with a solution. I always put in 100% effort in everything I do. I never shied away from a challenge. Um, and I'm also very loyal. I'm an extremely loyal person and always, always try to be true to my word. If I said I was going to do something, I did it. And I think that just built, and my managers were the same way. And it just built a mutual respect and trust because you want that. I think it's so important to have that because you want to be that go-to person. You want to be that person that your manager, goes to if it's something important. You want to be the person that they're seeking out to help them. And I know as a leader myself, when I see those same attributes in my employees, I will bend over backwards to do everything I can to help them, to advise them, to talk to them, just I'll point out things. I'll say, hey, I think you should try this, continue stretch goals, give them stretch goals, but give them a safe environment to take on a challenge and not necessarily, you got to give them opportunities to fail a little bit because I think they learn the most from that. You don't want them to fail at anything that's, very super important, but you want them to kind of make a mistake here or there because you learn so much from it. You don't make those mistakes again.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
so much about, too, is I think that's a great point,
mhm.
Bonnie, and it's more about kind of leaders
Right.
recognizing there's so many opportunities to connect with your colleagues, connect with even those colleagues that do step away for a little bit of a time, and
Mhm.
people that we know in the industry. And it's as much kind of a push as a pull, right? Is
Right.
leaders can recognize there's opportunities to really build that loyalty on their team and therefore develops into a natural like sponsorship and mentorship as well.
Right. No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
But we
yeah.
definitely can't wait for leaders to do it because, I think most people have built their careers really taking those proactive leaps forward, communicating really well and making it a point, especially in this virtual world. I think it's even more important to make sure that you're being intentional about your communication and your relationships to be able to create those kind of environments that you want for yourself in your career.
Right. No, I definitely agree with you. Yeah, communication is just so important, from a leadership perspective as well as from an employee perspective. We've got to encourage our employees to, raise their hand. Because what I'm seeing today, I'm not seeing people leave the workforce because there's so many opportunities because of technology and the evolution to do different things in remote environments and hybrid environments. And we need to not lose our employees to our competitors because of those opportunities. We need to figure out ways to allow an employee to raise their hand and say, I'm going through a period in my life where I need to either step back or slow down, and we need to be able to give them opportunities to do that in their careers. Because it's kind of a step back to step forward. And it's so important that we recognize that because we are low on critical talent and we don't want to lose the talent where we've spent so much time and money and investment in growing that person. So I just encourage managers, leaders, employees, just communicate with each other. Careers span decades. Periods in your life when you need to slow down a little bit, they're so short and inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. So, I just think we need to think about it. It's a journey. It's a process. Yeah.
I think it's one of those silent desires too sometimes because a person may feel concerned that they have this pull between their life and work and their desire for success in their career, concerns about maybe how their leader might respond or their company might respond. And it's all about kind of making sure that you don't almost self implode from those internal conversations, right? Finding
Right.
a way to constructively bring what it is you want to do, how it would make your job more compelling, or your ability to perform your job better or in a different way because you want to also invest in your personal life. I think so many stay silent about it or become disenchanted, change jobs thinking it might be better rather than kind of really thinking about having that tough conversation or viewed as tough conversation, because I think we often
Right.
view like if somebody wants to step away from their job or make a change or say no, we talk about internally to ourselves that it's going to be viewed very negatively. And I think your message really shows like there's a way to bring it in a way that could balance both and maybe be both good for both.
Right. It's not a failure. I think a lot of people think it's a failure if they're stepping away or taking a lesser role or slowing down in their career. It's not. It's just it's a period in time where priorities make it's just a smarter decision at the time. And we should respect that. We all go through seasons in our life. We don't ever know what's around the corner. And yeah, we need to give each other grace. We need to give ourselves grace because I do think people probably tend to internalize, and they're probably harder on themselves, and just they need to cut themselves some slack. It's okay.
Yep. And find your safety nets.
Yes.
Find those people that will support you in helping you, kind of have those tougher conversations. And so I think, for the person thinking about a leave or a sabbatical or doing just something different to help balance, what is happening in their personal lives, be a little bold, but, figure out how you can have the conversation,
Right.
versus self talk. Talk
Right.
to somebody, not just yourself.
Right.
And I think also now as a leader, it's really changed your perspective around that flexibility and how you can support your team. And I think that message is great for other individuals that are in leadership roles.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel, from having that experience and kind of living through that journey, it gives me a different perspective. I get real excited when something's happening with one of my employees, whether it's, having a baby, or, or just even a different family member taking leave to spend time with their family. I get excited and want to help. It's like, what can I do to help you? Because I completely understand it. And it's just trying to figure out, how do we get all leaders to understand that, and all employees to not be afraid, to make that decision.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie, for sharing your story. I know that, it really will be relevant for so many people thinking about this. And there's one or two things that Bonnie was able to share. I hope it helps you to not only fulfill the best career that you want from your life, but also the best family life as well. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
I appreciate it. I really do appreciate the opportunity and the interest. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.